In Burkina Faso, the government has launched a prison reform program that allows inmates to work in agriculture in exchange for reduced sentences. The way it works is very simple. For every month a prisoner spends farming, their sentence is reduced by 3 months.
What if the key to Africa's future wasn't hiding in politics or foreign aid, but behind prison bars? In a stunning move that's turning heads across the continent, Burkina Faso's captain Ibrahim Traore has just made headlines into a new method. Instead of locking prisoners away and throwing away the key, he's putting them to work, not as punishment, but as pioneers.
Nous ne lâcherons rien, absolument rien, même pas un seul centimètre carré. Donc, je vous souhaite de continuer à vous préparer, de rester toujours en état d'alerte, même si vous n'êtes pas en opération, il faut rester en état d'alerte.
From hardened inmates to hopeful farmers, Traoré is planting seeds of reform where no one dared before. This isn't just about second chances. It's about rewriting the rules of justice, agriculture, and dignity. Africa's most unpredictable leader is at it again. And this time, he's changing lives in the unlikeliest of places. Stay tuned, because this story is just getting started.
Où ils vont mettre en pratique les connaissances reçues. Issus de 80 communes du pays, ils ont pour mission principale l'augmentation de la production agricole.
Et également, nous sommes aussi prêts aussi à défendre aussi le Burkina.
From chains to change, Traoré's radical prison reform. In a move that blindsided Africa's political class, Captain Ibrahim Traoré didn't just talk about prison reform. He tore the rulebook apart. Instead of letting thousands of inmates rot behind steel bars, Traoré flipped the system. Incarcerated men and women, many jailed for petty crimes, poverty-driven thefts, and victimless offenses, were given a second shot at life. But here's the twist. He didn't turn them into factory workers or urban janitors. He made them farmers. Not just laborers, but landowners in training. He handed them tools, seed capital, and land plots. The idea? Rehabilitation through soil and sweat, not shackles. While Western headlines call this controversial, Africans on the ground are calling it revolutionary. This wasn't a PR stunt. It was part of a broader doctrine, Burkina Faso first. In a continent too used to imported solutions and borrowed governance, Traoré's grassroots initiative speaks volumes. Why feed prisoners when they can feed the nation? Why keep them idle when they can become skilled agriculturalists? The plan slashed the prison food bill, reduced repeat offenses, and fed thousands during food shortages.
Last week, Burkina Faso's Minister of Justice and Human Rights, Mr. Idaso Rodrigue Bayala, visited Baporo Prison Center, a correctional facility that has been transformed into a large-scale agricultural site, standing before vast fields of wheat, maize, and rice cultivated by inmates.
Traoré's version of restorative justice is less about lectures and more about legacy. And make no mistake, the soil these ex-prisoners now till is soaked in symbolism, freedom, purpose, and African self-determination. In Traoré's Burkina, redemption doesn't come from court appeals. It comes from calloused hands and hard-earned harvests. The prison agro pipeline, designed for dignity. Traoré didn't just wake up and point prisoners to a field. No, this wasn't some impulsive experiment. The prison agro pipeline was engineered down to the last detail. Traoré assembled a think tank made up of former inmates, agricultural engineers, and sociologists. The result? A hybrid system that functions like a university farm mixed with a startup incubator. Prisoners attend workshops on irrigation, crop cycles, and livestock management. They learn how to grow millet, tomatoes, and even cashews, Burkina's new golden crop. Once trained, they're assigned communal land that they farm collectively. The revenue? A split. A portion feeds state coffers, another supports the prison system, and the rest? It goes directly into the pockets of the farmers themselves. That's right. Prisoners are earning wages and saving money for re-entry into society. Some have already purchased motorcycles, rented homes for their families, or sent children back to school. And what does this mean for crime? A seismic drop. Recidivism rates are plummeting. Why go back to crime when you've tasted ownership? This isn't charity, it's empowerment. Even rural villagers who once feared prisoners now invite them to community markets. They grow better onions than us, one local woman said, laughing. Dignity is back in Burkina Faso's justice system, and Traoré isn't apologizing for that. He's doubling down. There's talk of turning more prisons into full-blown agricultural hubs. The old model, punish, isolate, repeat, is dead. The new model? Cultivate, educate, reintegrate. It's Africa's most ambitious criminal justice reform yet.
L'importance de la forêt au Burkina Faso sur ces trois plans. Au plan écologique, au plan économique et au plan socio-culturel. Au niveau du Burkina Faso, la politique environnementale est bâtie et s'intègre parfaitement donc dans notre national de développement économique et social.
Food security through redemption. Burkina Faso, like much of the Sahel, has faced food insecurity for decades. Climate change, armed conflict, and foreign exploitation all played a role. But Ibrahim Traore looked at a broken puzzle and saw an answer hiding in plain sight. Prisons filled with idle hands, farmlands lying uncultivated, hungry bellies from Ouagadougou to Dori. So, he connected the dots. By converting prisoners into farmers, he's attacking food insecurity head-on. The government doesn't just save money on incarceration costs, it generates produce. Wheat, corn, yams, and legumes from prison farms are now showing up in school lunches and community kitchens. Entire provinces have started depending on this produce for daily meals. And it's not just about quantity, it's about pride. Every bag of rice stamped, rehabilitated by citizens of Burkina, sends a message. This food is grown by Burkinabe, for Burkinabe. It's food sovereignty in action. International aid groups were stunned. We've never seen something like this work so fast, admitted one UN official. NGOs are now studying the model, wondering if it can be replicated across West Africa. But Traoré's not waiting for approval. He's scaling up the program with military precision, expanding land access, adding cold storage, and even launching an agro radio station to train new recruits. This isn't about optics. This is war against hunger, and Traoré is winning it not with guns, but with green thumbs. Food is the new weapon, and redemption is the new fertilizer.
8,000 VDP fighters aren't just being trained to protect the nation from enemies. They're being prepared to fight another kind of battle, against poverty, against hunger, against helplessness. These men and women, drawn from every region in the country, will be redeployed, not as soldiers with guns, but as agricultural entrepreneurs.
Breaking colonial chains, land redistribution reimagined. For centuries, African land was stolen, stripped, and monopolized. Colonial powers drew borders and fenced off fertile zones for foreign investors. Even after independence, that system endured. But Traoré's Farmer-Prisoner Initiative is rewriting that initiative. He's reclaiming state-owned land, often left barren or hoarded by absentee elites, and redistributing it not to corporations, but to citizens. Through a legal mechanism called community reclamation allocation, plots are now granted to prison farm collectives and individual ex-inmates based on performance. Imagine this. A man who once stole bread to survive is now the legal steward of 10 hectares, harvesting cassava and employing his cousins. This is more than rehabilitation, it's land justice. Traoré knows land is power, and he's putting that power back in Burkinabe hands. Western critics call it risky or populist, but to villagers and ex-prisoners, it's revolutionary. The soil they now own was once fenced off for mining bids or luxury developers. Now it feeds their families. No more middlemen, no more bribes, just raw, direct empowerment. Some say it echoes Thomas Sankara's legacy, and they're not wrong. Traoré is channeling that same fire, but with a 21st century blueprint. Drones, solar irrigation, blockchain-based land deeds. He's infusing tradition with tech. It's decolonization by cultivation. For every acre restored, there's a life rebuilt. And for every prisoner turned farmer, there's a stake in the nation's future. That's what they never expected, that land could heal wounds left by chains. But in Traoré's Burkina, it's happening. The economic ripple effect. You can't inject thousands of newly trained agricultural workers into a system without causing massive shockwaves, and Traoré knew it, but he didn't flinch. Instead, he designed for disruption. As prison farms bloomed, so did the need for tools, seeds, processing plants, and transport networks. Local blacksmiths received state contracts to make hoes and machetes. Rural artisans were hired to build storage silos. Suddenly, dormant villages had jobs, not just on farms, but around them. This wasn't trickle-down economics. This was bottom-up firepower. Prisoners weren't just changing their lives. They were reviving entire economies. In Cumbri, a prison farm now supplies 5 local restaurants. In Koudougou, an old factory was converted into a grain mill run by a co-op of ex-convicts. And here's the kicker. Burkina Faso's GDP from agriculture just ticked up for the first time in years, partly because of this labor shift. Farmers across the country are now collaborating with these graduates from prison farm programs, forming co-ops and seed banks.
Now this is how it's done. If you're a prisoner, you work 1 month on the farm, and then you get 3 months off your prison sentence. Now this goes a long way to equip the prisoners with some agricultural skills, so when they are released into the society,
money's moving, markets are growing, and the West? Scratching their heads. They're monetizing rehabilitation, said one flustered EU diplomat. Yes, they are, because in Traoré's vision, redemption has a return on investment. His prison farms are now budget contributors, not black holes. And with each fiscal quarter, that contribution grows. This is nation building, not charity. Every hoe lifted is a debt paid back to society. Every sale at market is another nail in the coffin of the old broken economic order. In Burkina Faso, justice pays, and Traoré is cashing in for the people.
In Burkina Faso, the government has launched a prison reform program that allows inmates to work in agriculture in exchange for reduced sentences. The way it works is very simple. For every month a prisoner spends farming, your sentence is reduced by 3 months.
Women behind bars, leading in fields and beyond. When Traoré expanded his initiative, he didn't forget the most overlooked population in African incarceration: women. Too often, female inmates are sidelined, stigmatized, and left to rot. But not under Traoré's rule. In Ouagadougou's main correctional facility, a new sector was carved out just for women-led agriculture. The results? Nothing short of stunning. Women who once faced life sentences are now running greenhouse projects, producing medicinal herbs, and teaching vertical farming techniques. They're growing aloe vera, moringa, peppers, and onions, crops traditionally linked with female economic roles. But here's where it gets beautiful. The state set up women-only cooperatives that feed directly into national health and school feeding programs. Empowered doesn't even begin to describe it. These women are now mentors, trainers, and co-op directors. One former inmate, Issa 2, now oversees a 5-acre garden that supplies pharmacies with organic ingredients. She earns more than most government clerks. Another, Mariam, trains new arrivals, giving them both confidence and technical skill. The recidivism rate for women in this program, nearly 0, because Traoré understood something the rest of the continent missed. When you rehabilitate a woman, you rehabilitate a community. Their children are fed, their villages are supported, their dignity returns, and so does national pride. In a world where incarceration often strips women of their voice, Traoré gave them megaphones and machetes. They're now singing songs while planting spinach. They're not prisoners anymore. They're pioneers who work for living. Traoré's media blitz, controlling the narrative. Let's be real, no revolutionary program survives without a narrative war. And Traoré? He's a media strategist disguised as a military captain. As global outlets tried to twist his prison farming initiative into a forced labor scandal, he went on offense. The government launched a docuseries called Seeds of Change, showing real stories of prisoners turned providers. Social media campaigns followed, with before and after photos, TikTok-style clips, and even live streams from the farms. Public opinion flipped almost overnight. "That man changed my life," said a former inmate turned farmer in one viral reel. State media ran weekly features on farm progress. Influencers visited prison farms and interviewed reformed inmates. The world saw raw transformation, not propaganda. Even Western journalists began questioning their own narrative bias. Meanwhile, Traoré's Ministry of Communications opened a channel dedicated solely to justice reform. It broadcasts training, testimonies, and legal updates in multiple dialects. This isn't PR, it's counter-colonial storytelling.
As agriculture is one of the major sectors, President Ibrahim Traore is immensely transforming. Together with the Ministry of Agriculture saw an opportunity by transforming idle prisoners into useful assets for the country.
Traoré is reclaiming how Africa tells its story. He doesn't beg for validation. He broadcasts results. He posts progress. And his people, they believe again. For too long, Africa's successes were buried beneath international skepticism. But now, Burkina Faso is in the spotlight, and it's for the right reasons. Through narrative control, Traoré made sure that prisoners weren't just farming crops. They were cultivating credibility. And in the digital age, that might be the most powerful harvest of all. The future, a nation that redeems, rebuilds, and rises. Traoré isn't done. The prison-to-farm pipeline is just the beginning. His administration is now exploring agro-industrial training centers for ex-inmates, complete with certifications, export partnerships, and cooperative shareholding. The long-term goal? Create an ex-prisoner-led farming union that feeds not just Burkina Faso, but neighboring nations too. He's drawing up plans for eco-villages run by rehabilitated citizens, solar-powered homes, compost systems, and permaculture-based farming, built by those once written off by society. Even Africa's top economists are watching with bated breath. If this model works, it could transform prison systems from South Africa to Senegal. And if it fails, it still broke more ground than most presidents ever dared. But the people aren't betting on failure. They're investing hope. Because what Traoré ignited isn't just a policy, it's a philosophy. That even the condemned can contribute. That land can lift more than it buries. That justice, when done right, can grow mangoes and meaning at the same time. International institutions can keep their sanctions. Burkina Faso has a different kind of power now. Not oil, not gold, but people, restored, reskilled, and ready. That's the legacy Traoré's building, one seed at a time. And in the fields once walked by prisoners, Burkina Faso is planting something far greater than crops. It's planting its future. From concrete cells to open fields, Ibrahim Traoré is proving that real leadership isn't just about power, it's about purpose. While the world watches with raised eyebrows, Burkina Faso is quietly growing more than crops. It's cultivating redemption, resilience, and radical change. Turning prisoners into farmers isn't just a policy, it's a message that even the most forgotten souls can be part of a national rebirth. As critics scramble to understand his methods, one thing is clear: Traoré is playing a different game. A game where prisons become farms and failures become futures. So, what do you think? Is this bold experiment the future of rehabilitation in Africa, or a risky gamble? Drop your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that are changing the continent.